Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are back playing my, I suppose, signature deck at this point, Green-Black Turbodepths. So I haven't played it for a little while on the channel, been doing some fun Halloween stuff I hope you all enjoyed, but now we're getting back to playing some more normal stuff, so here we are. For those who are unfamiliar, this deck is basically just winning with a 2020 from Dark Depths. So this comes in with 10 ice counters. We either remove all the counters with Hexmage, which then gets us our 2020 indestructible flyer, or we make a copy of it, and the Thespian stage, because it didn't enter as a Dark Depth, doesn't have the counters on, and then we get a 2020. So that's how we're doing it. We've got 8 tutors to make this happen, Crop Rotation and Sylvan Scrying. We've got some protection in the form of Not of This World for the creature, and Pithing Needle, which can name things like Wasteland or Caracas and stuff like that and help us out there. And we have a bunch of disruption to help us get there, so Thoughtseizes, Inquisitions and Duresses to take those pesky Brazen Borrowers out of people's hands or whatever. And then we got ourselves 8 pieces of fast mana to accelerate this out. In our mana base, we got a few little silver bullets, so a Bojuka Bog, a Ghost Quarter, a Sejiri Steppe, and a Boseiju. The Boseiju we can fetch with the Scrying, so it's actually quite a nice little singleton to have. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've played this many times before on my channel, just not for a little while. And if you want to know more about this, I have a very detailed guide on my Patreon. It's over 50 pages long, and there's also a sideboarding matrix with this particular deck list showing you all the ins and outs for all the matchups you need. So check that out if you are interested. Sideboard-wise, we've got a little bit more hand disruption. We've got a solid amount of graveyard hate, a solid amount of hate for artifacts, so Karn Forge and Storm decks. We've got 4 Abrupt Decays, so this answers your Opposition Agents, your Mages of the Moon, your Blood Moon, your Harbinger of the Tides. It hits all of them, and that's really good. And we have the 2 basics because we are a fetch hand mana base, so we have our Swamp and our Forest, so we can get those alongside our Lotus Petal and Spirit Guide and be able to cast this under a Blood Moon effect pretty effectively. Then we have 2 Sylvan Safekeeper for basically white removal matchups for the most part. This just gives us a little bit more in terms of protection for our creature. The reason I like the Safekeeper is because it doesn't cost us mana on the turn we're going, and the turn we're going sometimes costs us quite a lot of mana if we're activating Thespian stage, for example. So having a free way of protecting our creatures is quite important. Alright, that's the deck. Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel out. And if you want to see my videos early, just become a YouTube member for only £1 a month and you can help me out and get to see my videos early. And I really appreciate everyone who does that. All right, let's start making some delicious 2020 action for you lovely people. All right, we are into round 1. We don't really have the mana to make this hand work. We don't really have good access to our combo without having to go through 2 Sylvan Scryings potentially. So I think this is quite a simple mulligan. So what do we have here? We have Urborg, Thespian stage, green source. So these 3 lands plus a crop rotation will cast us our 2020. So because we can crop rotate up the Dark Depths here and it will tap for mana because of the Urborg, and that's the mana we need. And we have access to a Pithing Needle, which can protect us from Wasteland. So we're going to keep this hand. The question is, what do we throw back? So the choices are, we can keep both crop rotations so that we can't be duressed away out of having them. That's quite a solid plan. This also means that if we have more mana, we get to then find a piece of protection like a Sejiri Steppe that covers us from multiple angles. The other option is to keep this Lotus Petal in case we draw a piece of hand disruption, so we get the additional ability to have a peek at our opponent's hand on the turn we're ready to go. We are not getting rid of the Pithing Needle, so it's one of these 2. I think it's probably the Lotus Petal here. So we can fetch of this. I think we just get a basic forest for now. Is that true? We have the Urborg. I think that makes sense. Just get the forest here. Because this way, if this Pithing Needle doesn't resolve, then we get to have a non-wastelandable land for a turn cycle, which is quite important. The best draw for us would probably be a Duress style card. So whether that's Duress itself or Thoughtseize or Inquisition, just take a little peek at our opponent's hand and see what they're working with. Okay, so we're on one of the blue-black decks. Now this is 3 to 4 decks in the meta right now, depending on if you count the Reanimator build. Sorry, the Reanimator Doomsday build is a separate deck from like the Frog Tendrils, the Frog Tameo Doomsday build, sorry. They've put this Null Spellbomb into the graveyard. That tells us they're probably on a fair deck, so I'm imagining they are blue-black tempo. Okay, we did not find what we were looking for there. So I think we play out the Thespian stage. We have 2 stages. If something happens to our Needle and we get Wastelanded, it's not the end of the world here. So if we crop rotate, sacrificing our forest, we don't get to cast a second crop rotate. So it's going to be a Psychic Frog. Sure. So we have to make a decision about this crop rotation. I think what we do is we go to our turn and see if we draw a piece of hand disruption. We don't need to fire this off now. We have 8 pieces of hand disruption. Look at that. It's almost like I've played this game many times before. Alright, let's duress our opponent, see what they're working with. This doesn't hit Brazen Borrow, which is an important thing to note. Not every card can be Thoughtseized, unfortunately. Force of Will, Brainstorm, Prismatic Ending. So if we take the Force of Will, here, then they can Brainstorm looking for other answers. If we take the Brainstorm, they can't Force of Will right now. And the Prismatic Ending we don't have to care about for now either. So I think we take the Brainstorm here. And then, because we're not going this turn, we will crop rotate this Thespian stage now. That way we still have access to green mana. So we can go and get our Dark Depths and pass that over. Because we're not going this turn anyway, we play this. We have enough to combo with crop rotation held up. Now this might mean they have a Force of Will for our crop rotation, but they would have to have an answer and a Force of Will. And that's the thing that they're very unlikely to have. So we might be getting the Psychic Frog blocking for a turn, and then the Prismatic Ending trying to kill our creature, which is something to consider as well. Because if in that hand, let's say we take the Force of Will, then our opponent has the ability to sculpt and put back, you know, 2 of these dead cards in their hand and make them into real cards. And that is quite a concern for us. There's a Marshflats. And this way, if they play anything else, we get information about what they've drawn for turn as well. I wouldn't fault somebody for taking the Force of Will there, but I think the correct play is to take the Brainstorm. So they have a white source, they can use that for a Prismatic Ending next turn. They are going to get an additional draw step here from this Psychic Frog, which is unfortunate, but there's only so much we get to do about that. So our opponent might be on the Esper Stoneblade list that's been picking up a little bit lately. I think it was Maxtortion who did really well in a challenge. I can't remember if they won it or not. It's a thing to be aware of right now. Alright, so they discarded the Tundra. We can't make our Maritalage to block with because of this Prismatic Ending. Depending on what they do with their frog will give us some information about what our opponent's working with. Are they attacking here? They are attacking. Suggests to me that our opponent has an additional answer. We don't want to give them the chance of having this Prismatic Ending popping off. I'm feeling somewhat apprehensive about this, but things aren't getting better for us at this point. So again, Swords to Plowshared. Is the one card they have that we don't know blue? It is. Okay. So pretty unfortunate for us there. Right, they're discarding some more stuff to the Psychic Frog. They can discard the ending as well. I think we have probably lost this one. It's not entirely... Yeah, it's not entirely out of control, but it's not feeling great. Yeah, so they had to draw the white removal and the blue card to get there. Now, obviously, the Psychic Frog does help you draw additional cards. Like, if we take the Force of Will there, they have more ability to find the removal. So I think it's easier for them to find more copies of removal and stuff. So I'm still okay with the decision we made there. There's no point using this yet. We'll use it closer to the turn we're actually trying to go off to make sure there's no Borrowers or Swords to Plowshares hidden over there. But our opponent's just drawing 2 cards a turn. The Psychic Frog isn't going to get any larger and it's not going to be able to fly and block. Now we've got Ponder from our opponent. It's probably going to be somewhat difficult for us to overcome the amount of interaction our opponent's going to have after doing all these cantrips and drawing all these extra cards with Psychic Frog. But they need very specific cards to interact with us. Now, their deck has a lot more than a standard blue-black deck because they've got all these white spells that actually matter instead of all the black removal, which we just tend to ignore. A Hexmage. How do I feel about Hexmage? If we wait till we draw like a Dark Depths or something, we can just Thoughtseize. So if we draw Dark Depths, we get to Thoughtseize and then play the Hexmage because the Urborg gives us extra mana. However, if we were to draw like a Crop Rotation next turn, we would have wanted to have the ability to Thoughtseize and Crop Rot. We've already used 2 Crop Rots though. So if we were to... If we play the Hexmage out, we'll probably just get this Prismatic Ending off of our opponent, and that's not actually that important. So I think we're probably just passing here. Because what you do with Vampire Hexmage is you do your first strike damage, and then you remove all the counters from Psychic Frog, and there's no interval they have to pump it up enough. So you can always kill a Psychic Frog with a Hexmage in combat, provided it's not flying. In comes the frog. Can put us to 21. So still a long way to go before our opponent kills us. But we are getting buried by the card advantage they have assembled. Cryptic Coat. Yeah, this confirms that it's going to be some kind of Stoneforge build. I haven't actually played the Esper Stoneblade list yet. So I'll try and play that on channel at some point. Although next week we're starting the 2 weeks of playing like the top tier decks in the meta. Sort of showcasing what they're like to help people with Eternal Weekend prep. As it does obviously accelerate their clock. A Sylvan Scrying. Our opponent doesn't have hard cast Force of Will mana. They could have Daze here. This is really awkward. Because the best case scenario is We Sylvan Scrying here, and then we have Thoughtseize Hexmage next turn. If they counterspell this with a Daze, that's going to feel really bad for us. If we Thoughtseize now first, what does that actually accomplish? It delays us by multiple turns, and that's multiple cards our opponent gets. So I think we are supposed to jam this, because we can Thoughtseize and our opponent gets to draw 2 or 3 additional cards. Alright, so I just in with the Dark Depths here. Does our opponent have Wastelands in their list? I don't know. Are we supposed to play out this Dark Depths? Because if we play out the Dark Depths now, it means we can draw an additional land next turn. But what are we doing with that additional land? Nothing, right? Whereas we play this out, they Prismatic Ending our Pithing Needle, and then they can get us. So we don't actually gain any benefit from playing this out this turn, because all our mana is going to be spent next turn anyway. It means if they somehow remove one of our lands this turn, then we won't have enough necessary to go off next turn, but then we're not going to have enough to go off, because if they're going to remove any land, it's going to be our Dark Depths. So I think it makes sense to hold this in hand for now, just in case they have the Wasteland and can do some Prismatic Ending things. Alright, I played a Plains. Sorry, a Flooded Strand. And they're going to be deploying the Cryptic Coat again, I imagine. Alright, so we're taking a chunk here. There's a Stoneforge. What is this going to find? A Cauldron to speed things up. I have to imagine they want to get the game won. There it is. There's the Cauldron. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're not dead. 12, 13. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent and see what they're working with. Double Force of Will. So our Hexmage is not going to resolve. If we take a Force of Will, we get rid of the other Force of Will and the Cryptic Coat right now. But then the Cauldron Complete just bashes us. And then how much damage is that? So we're on 13. We take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That puts us to 1. So if we draw it next turn, we don't have enough to go off and survive. If we take the Cauldron, then we take 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we're just in a spot where we have to draw exactly Thespian stage. We've already gone through 2 of them. I don't think we can win this one. I think we have to rely on our opponent making a mistake here. Are they going to counterspell our Lotus Petal? Very unlikely. They did not want to. This is 100% getting a counterspell. Yep. Hardcast Force of Will. I don't think we had a way through there. Unfortunate. Alright, so how are we sideboarding against it? I don't know if they have Wastelands, so I'm just going to have a little quick Google and see if I can find out. Okay, so the list Max Distortion was not running any Wastelands. But we do have to contend with their Harbinger of the Seas from the sideboard. So I think we're going to want some amount of Abrupt Decays and Sylvan Safekeeper. We might want this Duress. I don't have a full sideboard map for this matchup because it's a relatively new one in the format. But we can definitely take out our Bojuka Bog. Pithing Needle on Frog is fine. Pithing Needle on Stoneforge is fine. They're not incredible. That's not really what this game is about for the most part. It's about disrupting our opponent's hand and making sure we can get our bits and pieces going. So what would be the missing link from what we have here that we want to add? We need to keep all of our fast mana because our opponent gets to play a blue Maze of the Moon. We don't really need the Ghost Quarter because our opponent isn't playing Wastelands. Now this can be a thing that finds us one of our basics in response to Harbinger of the Tides. We should be able to set up it underneath that anyway. So I think we're going to board out the Ghost Quarter, the Bojuka Bog, and the 4 Needles in favour of some removal and Sylvan Safekeepers to protect us from removal. Do I want this Duress? I don't think we can fit the Duress in. So I think we're going to go like this. So what does this one do? So we go turn 1 Boseiju, crop rotate it away. Our opponent has to have Force of Will. If they don't, we then get the Urborg, we Duress our opponent. And then we have turn 2 Hexmage. I'm willing to give that a try. There's a bit of a Force of Will check, but we still have a decent amount of resources in hand. Alright. Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. So suffice to say, they definitely had a Force of Will over there. White decks are traditionally quite difficult for the old Turbodepths players to deal with. They tend to be the decks that have a good matchup against the Turbodepths decks. Like white-blue especially, where they have counter magic that you have to worry about, as well as all the removal spells that actually work. So there is something to be feared. I have Underground Sea here. But we could just naturally draw an Urborg. And that would be pretty handy for us. We're basically just trying to draw lands here, which is one of the more abundant things in our deck is mana. So look at that. Drew it anyway. A Brainstorm and a Ponder. Ponder digs 4. Brainstorm gets rid of these bad cards. I'd rather have our opponent having to keep these 3 cards in hand. So I think we take the Brainstorm here. So we've got a shot at making the Hexmage next turn. I don't believe our opponent's build has a Daze in it. The build Max Distortion was running did not have Daze in. It just had Force of Negations in the sideboard. Right, so I imagine we're seeing the Ponder here as well. Pre-war formalware. This does look like the same build. Right, so we've got Ponder kicking off here. I think best draw for us now is Crop Rotation, because then that gives us protection with the Spirit Guide mana. They did not shuffle off the Ponder. Is that to try and display strength, or do they actually want the thing that's on top? I guess we'll find out. They would have to draw an exactly blue card and Force of Will here to deal with this. We know they don't have Wastelands, so we don't need to do this now. We do not need to go before their main phases, because we don't want them to have access to Prismatic Ending. The Flood Strand. Have you got something over there, opponent? A Tamiyo. Okay, so this could just be a chump blocker. I think we do go for it here. Our opponent had nothing last time we checked their hand. They've got 2 more cards since then. And we have an answer to Tamiyo, so we can just win the game right now. 4 blocks. We will get rid of this one. Goodbye, Tamiyo. Do they have the answer here? Could see something like a Brainstorm. Looking for an answer. Yep, so they're leaving the white mana up. But this will take the Tamiyo out of the way. It will leave it in play, but it won't be a creature to block with. Did they find it? They resolve that Brainstorm very quickly. Are they dead? Well, they have the answer here. I think if they were dead, they would scoop it up. So they have the answer. Of course they do. Yikes. Our opponent's saying they're lucky here. Yeah, we've put our opponent to the test a couple of times in this game, and our opponent's managed to get there. They're probably just going to win off this Tamiyo now. We don't have a green source to cast a Scrying. This Urborg is a dead card. Psychic Frog. Yep, that's a very nice follow-up to just get extra card advantage. It'll also give them a creature they can block with if that's necessary. I can play a Hexmage here, and I think I will. This means that we can keep the Tamiyo in check. Am I supposed to fire this off immediately? I don't think so. If we draw like an Elvish Spirit Guide or a Lotus Petal, we get to make a 20/20 next turn. So I don't think we just immediately kill the Tamiyo. This does mean our opponent can get back something like a Swords to Plowshares here, though. Are we supposed to stop their Tamiyo here? Stop their Tamiyo, they are just drawing more cards with Psychic Frog. They're probably just going to jump the Frog anyway. Yeah, it's a really tough call. Because this Tamiyo represents a guaranteed answer, but then we don't actually have a way of making a 20/20. So I think we have to hope our opponent doesn't see the Tamiyo getting back to the plow here. They're immediately returning the plow, sure. Because if we use this defensively now, then we've got nothing. Whereas drawing things like Hand Disruption is way more likely. So we can do that instead of using one of our important combo pieces. It's a Prismatic Ending? No. It's a Teferi Time Raveler. So this is a problem because it turns Pending on as an instant speed answer to our Merit Lage. This is what I mean about these decks having so many tools. The one thing that our opponent doesn't have that makes them not as scary as Bant decks is they're not playing Uro. Uro is a horrible card for us to play against because it puts them above 20 so we can't one-shot them, which turns on all their sorcery speed removal. And they can play it on turn 3, which then gives them 1-up mana so they can plow. But yeah, kind of similar deal going on here in terms of how bad things are for us. If they bounce our creature with their Teferi, we will crack it because then they won't get the draw off of this. And we can kill one of their things, which I think is a good enough trade. That becomes a 2-for-1 then. Although they're ploughing this. I guess we just get rid of the Teferi here. Our opponent said they misplayed, but I can certainly see that one. They shouldn't have played the Teferi out. I don't think it's going to matter. Okay, we've drawn a Bayou. Don't know what we're getting with this, but we could get something now and make sure that we have the ability to have more mana next turn. But I think we're supposed to just hold this in hand. We've got some life to work with, but the Tamiyo is going to tick up. The Frog's going to keep crashing in. Cards will continue to flow. So I have Hardcast Force of Will mana represented here. We have gone through 2 Force of Wills so far. Okay, do we want to play out this Lotus Petal? No, because it gives our opponent a target for things like Prismatic Ending. So we will just pass it over. Ponder from our opponent, getting that sculpting on. More cards flowing right into our opponent's grip there. A lot of back and forth in this game. Fortunately, it hasn't really favoured us. But we put our opponents to test numerous times, and it hasn't quite worked out for us. Which is sometimes the nature of decks. Verdant Catacombs. We do not have a Surveil land. There's not really space in the mana base for something like that here. So we can't get a little bit of extra Surveil action here. But it gives us more overall lands, which gives us more mana to multi-spell. It gives us mana to activate things like Thespian Stage. But our opponent is drawing 3 cards a turn. And they are heading towards the Tamiyo Ultimate next turn, I think. And I don't believe we're beating the Tamiyo Ultimate. So we need to do something big, and we need to do it now. Stoneforge Mystic, that's fine. We're already very cold to what you're doing over there. Another Stoneforge, sure. So we've got a Cauldron in hand. And they're probably getting the Cryptic Coat, I would imagine. If they've got a Battle Skull, they could get that to put themselves above 20 life. No, they revealed a Cryptic Coat, which is also a blue card for Force of Will. The Tamiyo pops next turn, which gives them lethal damage with the frogs, because they can discard all those cards with the frog. Although it doesn't give them lethal damage because we're on 35. I don't think we can win from this position with the Tamiyo popping off, so I'm going to unfortunately have to concede that one. Yeah, I think we got a little bit unfortunate there. Our opponent recognised that they got a little bit lucky there with the dig on the brainstorm and having the right answer at the right time there. But, that's the game we're choosing to play here. Let's go to round 2. Okay, so we have access to Thoughtseize. We can crop rotate to get all the bits and pieces. This seems fine to me. I think we are looking at getting a basic swamp here so that we're a bit wasteland resilient to begin with. And then we can fire off this Thoughtseize. Glaring Fleshraker, it the hell's the end. Wasteland. Okay, so Glaring Fleshraker is easily the scariest thing they have. Can we get through this before the Thoughtseer comes into play? There's a turn 2 Thoughtseer. If we take the Lotus Petal, then they make a turn. Then they can make a turn 2 Fleshraker, which is quite slow, and then they make a Thoughtseer. Fleshraker and It the Herald's End is a bit of an interesting. We're not taking It the Herald's End. That much is a given. We want our opponent to tap this wasteland for mana, so we need to leave them some colourless stuff to cast on turn 2, which means we take the Lotus Petals if they want to cast a Fleshraker on 2. That probably works out best for us. The Yawgmoth doesn't help them cast anything, like ahead of curve. So I think we take the Lotus Petal here. So we have some draws that allow us to try and win the game next turn. Or, put our lethal threat into play and hope they don't draw a Kozilek's command off the top. There's the Yawgmoth. That helps us out quite nicely. Let's Pithing Needle in. We're going to name Wasteland. Then, does it matter which land we play here? I don't think it does. This thins us out slightly, but costs us 1 life, which is a relevant detail at the moment. But it is a Bayou. Well, it is tapping for green mana on its own anyway. Because this is going to be our second black to go along with this one. For next turn, we go and get our Dark Depths. It's interesting they played the Yawgmoth here. Because this means they don't get to play like a Fleshraker now. If they'd have gone like Ivoogan or Wasteland. Alright, they just drew a Song Micah Spawn. Okay, it's pretty good. We do race this unless they've got a one of Caracas. Or Drowsy Temple. Okay, so now they're going to cast this Thoughtseize as well. Yep, a little bit rude. They did not cast the Thoughtseize. That is a very surprising turn of events to me. If I go and get the Dark Depths now, our opponent kind of has more of an idea what's going on. If they have a Kozilek's command, we lose to that anyway. We don't have an answer for the Kozilek's command. They have 1 mystery card in hand. I think we just pass it over. Make our opponent not think we have an answer just yet. Or a way of winning the game just yet. So we'll let this enter. And then when they put the trigger on a stack, we'll go and fetch up our little Dark Depths. So we got 2 mystery draws. If one of them is a Kozilek's command, they have us here. Attacking with the It the Hell's End seems like an error. Because we have first strike here. So, am I playing around what they could have here? They quite clearly are holding open Kozilek's command, or at least bluffing it. I think we have to respect that bluff. We have a lot of draws that can deal with it. That's not one of them, unfortunately. Am I playing out this Elvish Spirit Guide to block with? So we have 8 pieces of hand destruction, 7 left in the deck, and we have 4 Not of This World. And we have Crop Rotation. Actually, Crop Rotation doesn't work because Sejiri Steppe doesn't protect us from it. So it's just the 11 draws. That's still quite a lot. Right, so there is the Fleshraker. That shuts off a lot of our draws now. I think we probably have to put our opponent to a test here because they've narrowed down so many of our draw options. So it's only the 4 Not of This World, and I don't think we're trying to draw to a 4 of. I think we just have to say, do you have it or not? Are you bluffing it or do you have it? Feels like they have it here. Yep. So this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this last one is 10. So what do we draw here? We have to draw a Hexmage. Alright, so we're going to get some more pings off of this Fleshraker as well. So we are alive if we draw exactly a Hexmage. Did not draw exactly a Hexmage. We can play the Dark Depths. Play the Dark Depths, play a 2-2. We block here. We take 3, 4, 5. So we might still be alive. The next turn gets more difficult. But difficulty is certainly something we are facing today. If they have It That Heralds the End, they can obviously pump these spawns and come in for a big attack that will be lethal. Right, so they're only coming in for 7. So if we take the 7, we're dead guaranteed next turn. If we block here, we take 3. We go down to 6. Then next turn, we're dead anyway. So we're just dead whatever happens here. I'm going to put us to 1 next turn if they don't have anything else. But if they cast anything here, we don't have a route out of this game. Okay, Kozilek's command is actually lethal, so... Right, we did not get to go and put the win there. We tried. So what do we want for this matchup? So, Duress is pretty bad here. Bojuka Bog doesn't do anything, and neither does Sejiri Steppe because all their removal is colourless. So these are the 4 cards that come out. We get ourselves some Abrupt Decays because they help versus some Chalices, which can lock us down a little bit, and we bring in 1 Sylvan Safekeeper. The reason for the Safekeeper is this gives us protection against their Kozilek's command. So the thing about Thoughtseize is it can stop things like Thoughtseize punching a hole in us and that sort of jam. I don't think we want to be having the Duresses in just for the Kozilek's command. The Inquisition can hit a decent chunk of their things. So we're going to kick it like this. What does this hand do? Doesn't have a way to make a 2020, so we're going to have to throw that one back. This Thoughtseize is into turn 2 2020. I don't think you can say fairer than that, can you? If we're going to get Wastelanded, we probably want to get rid of the Thespian stage. That plays around Wasteland the best here. This hand should be fast enough to beat what our opponent's doing most of the time. Especially with the little bit of Thoughtseize action to clear the way. What do you got over there, opponent? It the Hell's the End. Flute, Wastecape, Battle Mage. None of these really matter. I think we have to take the Disruptor Flute and then we just race the other things they're doing. A little bit worried about the Wasteland, but if they Wasteland us, then we just restart the game again. Alright, I think we take the Flute. Because if they draw us like a land that's for 2 and they deploy that on Hexmage, that shuts down our plan entirely here. They do get to do some Devouring of Destiny and look for piece that they require there. So they're way more likely to have the additional mana to play the turn 1 Disruptor Flute. What do they exile here? Chalice of the Void, Ancient Tomb, and Blast Zone. So we're going to see Temple and It the Herald's the End, I suspect. So we have to crop rotate away our Bayou here. So that we can get the double mana from the Urborg and the Dark Depths here. We have to make this now so that our opponent cannot Wasteland. We know they have a Wasteland in hand. So they need to have blue mana for the Wastecape Battle Mage. Or they need to have the Kozilek's command. So playing around the thing that is in front of us. Right, so they found the blue mana. Of course they did. Okay. That is problematic. They have very few blue sources in their deck to actually kick this. A little bit unfortunate for us right there. Oh, Eldrazi. Why are you such an unreasonable deck? So we need to draw some better cards than what we have. So we did have a different line last turn where we play a Pithing Needle on Wasteland instead. Now the problem with doing that line is that if our opponent blows up the Pithing Needle with this, like getting green mana, which is much more abundant in their deck, then all of a sudden their Wasteland is active. So if we go then and they have the Wastecape Battle Mage, then we're in trouble. I think it's much better to play around than being able to kick this for green than it is to kick it for blue. So we got a couple of draw steps left, but I think we are pretty much done here. Another Urborg. We need 2 cards to win from this point, and we're not going to have time to win. So that is the match over, unfortunately. Yeah, well, we looked at our opponent's hand, we played around what we could, and it just didn't quite come together there. It's unfortunate. All right, let's go to round 3. I can keep this hand. This hand can do some pretty weird things. So we can go float black, crop rotate into another black source, crop rotate into Dark Depths, play this, get rid of our Dark Depths, and make a 2020. So we can make a turn 1 2020 with this hand in a weird way. However, alright, our opponent's got Blood Moon. That does change things up a little bit for us. Now this is the matchup that we are incredibly favoured against in general. So I'm not too worried about it. What are we going to play out here? Does it matter is the real question. I think we just play out a Bayou. We could go and get our basic Swamp, but we really need to get our basic Forest. And that doesn't cast us any spells right now, so we're just not going to do anything. So we need to get our basic Forest, and then we need to Boseiju this after we go and get a Dark Depths. A Ghost Quarter, that's probably not doing very much for us right now. That's Urborg. So we just go get both of our... We can go get one of our basics here. But I don't think that's where we need to be. We need to wait till we find some additional tutoring. So our opponent really not keep any follow-ups, just a Blood Moon. Okay, does that change anything here? At the Thespian stage. So we could get a Hexmage down and just start beating. I don't think Duress is going to make much of a difference here. I don't think we can afford to waste this crop rotation though. So I think we're just passing the turn. I don't think our opponent's going to play a Chalice on 0. Maybe they will. There's definitely an argument for playing out this Lotus Petal. But you see, I'm not really expecting our opponent to have that. The One Ring. Okay. Inquisition of Kozilek. Okay, I guess we'll play this out now. SIDEBOARD is another thing we need to consider as well on that front. So our opponent won't be able to beat a Marit Lage unless they can just kill us outright. And they haven't put any pressure in play yet, so we've got a little bit of time. Broadside Bombardiers. That is a very good Magic the Gathering card. I don't believe they're going to throw their One Ring, but it means they won't ever die to their One Ring while they have this Bombardiers around. And they're probably going to have some random Flotsam and Jetsam they can throw at us down the line. Right, there's a Lotus Petal. I imagine that's going to be 2 damage to our face at this point. They've got plenty of mana over there. There it goes. Okay. A Boseiju. Okay, so we get to kill our opponent next turn. Big fan of doing that. So this could have been a Sylvan Scrying, and that would have done a similar job. Alright, Chaos Adventurer. You can go into the Undercity. And then you're going to go to a different city. Pain City. 2020s to the face. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. That's fine by me. So our opponent can hit us for 8 this turn, but then we just kill them. Big fan of doing that. They might throw this Shaman at us. Alright, just going to throw the One Ring at us. That's fine by me. Dark Depths. The Blood Moon means it comes in with no counters on. Their Blood Moon. We have a Massive Friend. We attack you with our Massive Friend. We go to the sideboard. I don't believe there's anything our opponent can have unless they are playing white in their deck that we haven't seen yet. And it sound like a Solitude. This is why I like playing against these mono red decks, because we effectively get additional combo cards using our opponent's Blood Moons. Now sometimes you do lose them just stacking loads and loads of Blood Moons and you're never getting out from underneath them. But that happens very rarely in my experience. I think the win rate in this matchup is over 60%. I think it's closer to 70%. Okay, that's pretty good. So what are we sideboarding here? Bojuka Bog, a couple of Pithing Needles, a couple of Not of This Worlds. They can all go. And we just want these Abrupt Decays. Right? We get to keep one of these. Would I rather have Pithing Needles to stop Broadside Bombardiers or Not of This World to stop Dead Gone? It's probably... We'll try and stop the Dead and Gone. Like you can board either of these depending on how you feel. So we need to approach this matchup with a slightly different mindset. I think the actual correct approach from our opponents a lot of the time is if they just have a really aggressive hand and just try and race us. Because we have to respect the Blood Moon and they don't have to have the Blood Moon, if that makes sense. Because if we're respecting it, that means that our combo might be slower and they can just aggro us out. So what does this hand do? We play a Thespian stage, we turn it into a Dark Depths at some point, then what? We turn it into a forest, then a second land gets us a Sylvan Scrying for Boseiju. This one seems slow, we can do better. What do I feel about this one? They're keeping 6. I like having access to basics here. I have access to a basic, I have access to another colour. So Abrupt Decay works for us here. We only have the one land though, which is a bit sketch. I think we can do better on 5. Okay. This one can blow up a Blood Moon. We don't have a way of putting our combo into play. We have to draw into one of 12 cards. Is that better than going to 4? Questionable. I think I'll keep this one. So we don't need the Not of This World. And would I like to keep this Boseiju or this Thoughtseize? I think we just want the raw number of lands. So it's the Thoughtseize that goes here. So we're hoping our opponent's just indexed heavily into getting a Blood Moon and then we can just find a way out from underneath it. Which our deck is very prepared to do. A Vampire Hexmage, you say? So I could play the Hexmage. I don't really think we need to play the Hexmage. I'll play out this Lotus Petal because our opponent will have access to things like Vexing Bauble potentially. Just want to get out ahead of that. I don't really want to burn this Lotus Petal on a Hexmage when it might be one of our only coloured sources underneath the Blood Moon. So I suspect this is the turn we see Ancient Tomb into Blood Moon. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, sure. So we could play the Boseiju and then use that to play the Hexmage here. Okay, or even better, we can play the stage here and then play the Hexmage that way. The Hexmage checks their creature quite nicely. So about a quarter of the deck are the cards. About a quarter of our deck are cards that win us the game. More or less, right? We got 12 cards. It's just under a quarter. But that rough ballpark. We have answer for Blood Moon and something else. That's what our opponent's up to. You got a Blood Moon? So they probably have some amount of Magus of the Moon as well, which is why the Abrupt Decay is so good, because you have the flexibility to kill whatever you need. Just the Bombardiers. So we are probably losing our Hexmage. So they're going to use the treasure to shoot our Hexmage here. We can remove counters from their Fable if that's a thing we're interested in doing. Oh, they didn't get rid of their guy that way. That's interesting. So we can remove the counters from the Fable, which means this won't flip next turn, but it will mean they get more 2/2s, they get more ability to draw and discard and dig into useful cards. So I don't believe I want to do that. We're just going to let our guy go. I think they should have sacked their treasure token. I don't know what's in their hand, though. They might be following up with a Blood Moon here or something. That would make sense. Another Urborg. It's not the one we wanted, was it? If we play this Boseiju out, we have the Abrupt Decay on tap, but I don't think that's where we really want the Abrupt Decay. I think we just passing it over here. So statistically speaking, next turn we're odds on for drawing it, since we've missed on the other draws. We're getting domed for 5 by sacking the Reflection. I suspect not, because they can copy Broadside Bombardiers with it. The One Ring. Sure, that's some cards. A Lotus Petal from our opponent. Is that getting flung at us? I'm sacking the One Ring immediately. Old proclamation right there. A Lotus Petal. I'll play out a Lotus Petal. So if they go to copy the Broadside Bombardiers, I think we just shoot it down straight up. A Broadside Bombardiers. Okay. I assume the Reflection is copying a Broadside Bombardiers this turn. It's not. So they attack for 2, 4, 6. They throw 1, we die. If we shoot this guy, they copy it, and they attack us for 4 damage here, and then they throw 6 more damage at us. So the play here is hit this one. We have to do this to survive here. And then when they go to copy something, we can Abrupt Decay it. Copying this one. Okay. Black. And I think we use the Spirit Guide here because we might want some more black mana. We already have lots of black mana there. I don't want a thing that can be interfered with. Alright. We are pretty cold to Blood Moon now, but we had to do that so we didn't die this turn. And maybe we can draw one of the things that lets us win the game. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Crop Rotation or Dark Depths. We've only got 8 things that we can draw now. Time's probably gone where the Sylvan Scrying is going to do enough. This is what I mean about we have to keep a hand that respects Blood Moon, but if our opponent puts us in a situation where they're just aggroing us down and we've got a slightly slower hand that respects the Blood Moon, then it goes poorly for us. Okay, so they swing for 4, and then they throw this for another 2, so we're not quite dead, but we are dead the following turn. I think we can't win that one. Okay, so do I want to change anything differently here? We can maybe go up 1 Pithing Needle and down 1 Not of This World for Broadside Bombardiers. I like having hand disruption to begin with. I think we'll keep this like this one slight change. On my sideboarding matrix for this matchup, it is -2 Not of This World and only -1 Pithing Needle. So that's what we're doing right now. So turn 2. So we're always going to be casting this Crop Rotation. We're probably going to do it off of this land anyway. So I think we play our basic out and our Lotus Petal here. Play the Lotus Petal ahead of any sort of Vexing Bauble shenanigans. We want to have access to the Crop Rotation in case they have a Chalice for 1. Volcanic Fissure. It's land destruction. Could come in handy. It's an important thing we have to think about and play around these days though. Right, lots of Lotus Petals. And a Chromox. We're going big. Something large is about to happen. What is it going to be? A Broadside Bombardiers. White mana. I think that's just because that's the first one you click. We race this Caves of Chaos Adventurer. So that's fine by me. So if we sacrifice this forest. In this case, if I sacrifice the forest or we sacrificing the Lotus Petal. One of them has to go here. I think I'd rather just keep around the forest. So we get rid of this Urborg, we get a Dark Depths, we use the Lotus Petal to play the Hexmage here. We've seen the Volcanic Fissure. That is sorcery speed though. So we don't need to play around that just yet. So they're going to go down the Scry route here, I would imagine. There it is. There's Scry 2. Let's see where they put them. 2 on the bottom. Love to see it. So now they're also seeing if they get something useful off the top with the Caves of Chaos Adventurer. They got a dead Gone off the top. That is very frustrating for us, isn't it? If they can just hold that up and protect their creature now. And does put us in a spot. So they can cast this until end of turn. So we can't make our 2020 here. Vampire Hexmage. Okay, so we can go and get the initiative off of our opponent. And because they went down the slow side, they don't get to deal as much damage to the point where we should be super scared and threatened. Get Swamp. So we can play this out and hold up the Abrupt Decay. I think that is the line. So if this attacks, we can see what it gets. A Blood Moon. Right, I think we're going to make the 2020 and block the Caves of Chaos Adventure here. We've got a second dead gone. That is obviously annoying. But we don't take any damage from this. We keep the initiative. And we can go down the right-hand side. 4 mana. Is this the One Ring? Yeah, sure. Scrying 2. Don't want that one. And we don't want that one either. Pithing Needle would be fine here. Thespian Stage. I guess I can take that one. There's no point attacking because they have protection from the One Ring. We can turn our Thespian Stage into a swamp, which allows us to cast the Vampire Hexmage. If we have to Abrupt Decay, we can. We can't block with the Marit Lage if they have the Brought-Up Bombardiers because it has Menace. So we have to decide if we're hitting that with Abrupt Decay or not. I don't want my opponent to have the initiative. We've got a Soon Spirit Guide to Dead and Gone our creature. City of Traitors, that gives them enough mana to Dead and Gone it, if that's what they have. 4 mana. The One Ring. Alright, we're doing this whole song and dance again, are we? Which one are they keeping? The one that draws more cards? Or the one that deals them less damage? Alright, so they get to draw a card right now off of this one. So it's Stash or Arena. So we're going to go for Stash here. This allows us to cast the Vampire Hexmage. We can Sylvan Scrying. What does that actually find us? Nothing really that important. I think we cast the Hexmage here. We can stop them from drawing more cards if we want to. So we can sacrifice our Hexmage to make them draw 1 fewer cards. But I'm not really sure that's necessary here. I'm uncertain how many One Rings they have in their deck as well. Because if we sacrifice this, we don't have access to Dark Depths again. Because we can easily just make a Marit Lage. 4 mana. Caves of Chaos Adventure. So they get back the initiative here. This takes them down to probably Stash. They could Arena and try and hit our Hexmage here. And try and gobble that up if they want to. Alright, they're going down Stash. Okay. A Lotus Petal as well. 4 cards left in our opponent's hand. Blood Moon, or is this dead gone? Pithing Needle, I don't hate that one. Let's go to attacks. I think they have dead gone here. Nope, they had nothing. And we get the match. Lovely stuff. Yeah, so this is a very good matchup for the deck in my experience. My numbers on it are pretty strong. I won't pull up the sheet now, but it's close to about 70% win rate for us. Our deck is quite polarizing in the matchups as a general rule anyway. There's a few that are middling, but generally speaking, we have a lot of really swingy ones either way. All right, we've got a win on the board. Let's go to round 4. This is a weird hand. So we can go turn 1 for Wasteland, turn 2, Crop Rot it for Urborg and try and go that way. It's not great into counter magic, but we can cross that bridge when we come to it. I think we'll keep, and we'll lead off on Stage. This is just going to get rotated out, potentially. Alternatively, we can play a slower game and maybe draw up some lands and try and go on turn 3 instead. But we can go on turn 3 where the only thing that gets countered there is the Sylvan Scrying. That might be a stronger option. Let's go Pithing Needle. Let's get that Wasteland in. Mox Diamond. Alright, this is not a matchup I'm a great fan of. The sort of green-white depths / full-on lands matchups tend to be pretty tricky for us. We need to be playing against like red decks, and reanimated decks pretty good for us as well. Right, Exploration. Windswept East. Actually don't mind the Eldrazi matchup for our deck either. It's not as good as it once was, but it's still pretty fine. Anyway, our opponent's got a Sylvan Library in place. They're going to have a lot of options. They've shown us the Savannah, which means they're going to have Swords to Plowshares in their deck. So all sorts of nonsense we're going to have to deal with here. I'm not feeling good about this one. We do know that we're not getting counterspelled though. So maybe we just jam and hope that our opponent doesn't have it. Because every turn we give them, they're going to Sylvan Library their way out. So here goes nothing, I guess. Let's turn this into an Urborg. We're already playing around Wasteland here because of our Pithing Needle. So we don't need to immediately make the Dark Depths right now. I'm a little bit worried about them having another Thespian stage, but they've already put one in the bin, so it's not that likely they have multiples. But it's possible. If they are a green-white depths deck, then they have Prismatic Ending as well. So you need to be careful of that. The Saga next turn. Okay, so they've got a Maze of Ith, and they got the Thespian stage there. Yuck. So they can make a 2020 in response to us making a 2020. And then next turn they get this, which can then Pithing Needle this. So we need to find a piece of fast mana or our Ghost Quarter, I think, to win the game. And even then, that doesn't look great for us. If we make the 2020 now, our opponent gets a 2020. They still have Maze of Ith up, so we have two things we have to answer on the opposing side of the board. How are we supposed to do that? Uncertain. So if we made the 2020 before the Thespian stage came down, then we'd only have one thing we need to answer. But if they are running a build with things like Prismatic Ending in, then that is an issue for us. I think this game has gone on for enough turns that our opponent is going to steam ahead now. Because they get to get Pithing Needle potentially for our Hexmage here. If they make a construct, then we make a 2020. But they'll probably just get an Expedition map, go and get Caracas, and then... Yeah, this game feels unwinnable already. We're not having a great time. Well, we stopped them making a token because they want to have access to their Thespian stage. I imagine the Sylvan Library is going to be draw all the cards and keep them. I think that is what I would do in this situation. Alright, they only kept one of the cards. That might be because they're not good and they want to shuffle anyway, so they don't need to power through them. Take the best of the bunch and then shuffle it up for next time. You don't have enough mana to copy that opponent. That's why I'm doing it now. Alright, so we got our 2020. They unfortunately have enough to go and find an Expedition map, crack it, get Caracas and blow us out. There's the Expedition map. Oh, they've played one land. They've got another land drop. Okay, they played both their land drops. That's a mistake. To crack the Expedition map and get the Caracas here. They might have just given us a window that we didn't deserve. Because they've already played their land. They played two lands this turn, right? Is there some, like, cycle land or something? Is there, I'm just trying to think of... I can't think of anything. There's Caracas, but they can't put it into play because they've played two lands. They misplayed by playing out the Yawgmoth. Yep, alright. We were so dead there. But sometimes your opponent will make mistakes. So as a general rule, our discard is pretty bad here. And then we get some additional options. So Sylvan Safekeeper can protect us from Caracas and the Plows. Then we get some Abrupt Decays and some access to a couple of Faerie Macabres. And that's about where I want to be here, I think. Like, the Bojuka Bog is still useful here. So I think we're going to roll in like this. This is what I have on my matrix, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's go in. Sorry, I need to actually take these out before I click submit. Otherwise, you have a 68 card deck. All right, there we go. So 8 out, 8 in. So this hand is quite slow. This is a matchup where, as time goes by, it gets worse for us. So we need a hand that goes quicker. So I think we have to mulligan this. Double Pithing Needle is not nothing here. We have double Pithing Needle into not this world. We don't have any way of actually doing our combo though. And if we give our opponent unlimited time, oh, they've mulliganed to 5. I think we need to mulligan again. Okay, this is more like it. So we have a Pithing Needle, great piece of tech. Sylvan Safekeeper. We want to keep as many. We need to keep both of our lands here. We need to keep a crop rotation. So we're probably getting rid of these two cards. We're both mulliganing to Oblivion. Let's see who comes off better. We do get to draw on the first turn, so we'll have slightly more resources than our opponent in the first turn cycle. And this game is probably going to be condensed into important plays in the first handful of turns. So, mistakes not pending, the game is likely to be decided one way or the other by turn 2. Not of this world. So more protection. I think we're going to go and fetch a basic forest. And then we're going to deploy the Pithing Needle and shut off this wasteland that our opponent mulliganed to. That looks pretty good to me. A box diamond from our opponent. So they're already on depleted resources. They're about to be on even fewer resources, but they could easily undo this. Okay, I was going to say with a Light from the Loam, but Sylvan Library also does a good job of undoing their mulligan. So we have a Ghost Quarter, which is an answer for Caracas. Not this world is an answer for Caracas. And an answer for Swords to Plowshares. We do need to find an actual way of assembling the combo. But until that point, we're going to beat down with our little friend, Sylvan Safekeeper, with the correct art. Just a little guy and his little spider friend. Little human wizard. What's not to love? Alright, they kept the card. I'm a big fan of that. You always want to power through with your Sylvan libraries where you can. This is not a matchup where their life total matters a huge amount. We're going to be dealing it mostly in chunks of 20. Obviously, if they were to then burn a bunch more. Ooh, they've given us another green source. That's really helpful. I appreciate that. Yeah, but if they were burned through lots of their life total, then maybe our Sylvan Safekeeper ends up doing something. Swords to Plowshares on our Sylvan Safekeeper. I don't think we can afford to sacrifice a land here, so we're just going to gain the life, but it's prevented one removal spell, right? So it's done its job there. A Lotus Petal. Do we play this out? Our opponent could have Vexing Bauble in their deck as something they get off of an Urza's Saga. Is that something they're still going to have in for us? This can open us up to a 2-for-1 on Force of Vigor. I think we're supposed to keep this Lotus Petal in our hand for now. Although it does give us access to this Abrupt Decay. Do I want to Abrupt Decay this Sylvan Library? Our opponent is showing us some stuff that makes me think they are just like green-white lands. So maybe we just hit this library and stop our opponent that way. So I think that's a good use of our resources here. Oh, okay. Well, our opponent had to go, so we don't get to play the rest of this one out. But I think it's quite interestingly poised. There's a lot of different ways this game could play out. I'm just going to see if we can draw a couple of extra cards and have a look. Nope. Magic Online has decided we've had enough of this game. This is generally not a great matchup for us, but we can certainly have ways through it. The fact that we have a nice piece of protection in the Not of This World and the Pithing Needle and the Ghost Quarter means we have quite a lot of resources. We can play a slower game if we get rid of this Sylvan Library, so it'd be interesting to see how this one played out, but we don't get to do that. We've just got one more round left of this league. We're currently 2-2, so we're looking for the 3-2 record. Right, our opener for this final round. What do we have here? We've got a basic, kind of a double-edged sword in terms of this hand. I think we just need a little bit more mana. We don't really have a quick route to the combo. We can do better than this. What does this hand do? Lots of fast mana, but nothing really to do with it, so we're mulliganing again. Okay. Interesting. I don't know if 4 cards is going to be better than this. Let me just think how this works. So we get rid of 3 of these cards. So we probably don't get to keep the Thoughtseize. We kind of need the Bojuka Bog. I think we need to go to 4 here. It's not really working out for us. Okay. This is an acceptable one. I think we keep this. It's not great, don't get me wrong. I think we get rid of... We have to choose between the Duress and the Inquisition. I think we're going to keep the Inquisition. And we get rid of an Elvish Spirit Guide. And we probably get rid of a Thespian Stage here. And then we can play on basics for a little bit. Or do we just get rid of the Thespian Stage? Oh, sorry, get rid of the Elvish Spirit Guide and just not play on basics. Just have a raw amount of mana. We'll try that. Obviously, we're mulliganing a lot here, so outlook not great for us. Snow-covered island. Tamiyo. All right, we're going to be up against it here. A swamp. Okay, I think we play that over the Verdant Catacombs here. We have a look at our opponent's hand before they get a chance to brainstorm and change up some of the pieces. Wowzers, trousers. Not a big fan of any of these things happening. We can play around back to basics more easily than we can play around the Swords to Plowshares right now. My question is, how well do we play around 4th Eorlingus? Because that is an awkward one, I won't lie. That's a turn 3. I think we just have to get rid of the Swords to Plowshares and just assume that our opponent, you know, is going to be able to do some things, but we just have to make sure that those things don't really matter. So we just take the things that matter and they're going to end up with more cards overall. Whereas if we take the 4th Eorlingus, then we still have to worry about the Swords to Plowshares. They drew an island here. I'm going to attack with their Tamiyo. They're probably just going to hold open and crack the clue. Then we can play a basic land, which is going to deter our opponent from doing anything. That's a different thing. So if we play this Thespian Stage, if we draw the Dark Depths next turn, we can go using the Spirit Guide. So our opponent is now looking to do some back to basics. And that's a more likely approach our opponent's going to take. This looks to be the Jeskai control deck, which is, again, not a great matchup because they have counter magic, ways of disrupting our lands, and they have the white removal. But we have good matchups in my experience, into things like Karnforge, Painter, Mono Red. Eldrazi is slightly positive. The Reanimator is positive. The blue-black tempo deck is around the 50% mark. But these white decks are a real kick-in. Here comes Back to Basics. I don't know what else I could be playing with this mana. Especially when we've seen the Back to Basics already. No, our opponent's changing their mind. Maybe they're not into it. Oh, sorry. We were still in their end of combat stage. That's why it wasn't happening. Alright. So, can we draw the Dark Depths? We cannot draw the Dark Depths. We can play the Verdant Catacombs, though. We are hoping to dodge our opponent having a Plains. So what we can do is we can get a Forest and we can turn our Thespian stage into a Swamp, and then it will untap because it will have the basic type. So it'll become a copy of Swamp with additional text. Alright, they didn't 4th Eolingus before combat, even though they have the white mana. That is very surprising to me. I think you just snap that off, unless their plan is to double tap their clues and flip the Tamiyo, which is fine. But I think just getting the 4th Eolingus and getting the damage on the board is probably where I would take that turn. But I don't know what's in our opponent's hand alongside this 4th Eolingus. Alright, 8 to Faerie. Yeah, that's obviously annoying for us. Let's crack this. Forest. I think we want a second black source because we have black spells. We don't really have many green spells. And we have this Elvish Spirit Guide in hand. A Duress. Like, that's obviously something that I want to use at some point. And considering they have this big 4th Eolingus, now's as good a time as any, I think. Snap that off and see what our opponent's working with. They might have a Brainstorm to hide some things. They did not. Force of Negation, Wrath of the Skies, 4th Eolingus. So the one of these that scares me the most is probably the 4th Eolingus at this point, because that can end the game, give them lots of card advantage. So I think we're going to send that one back. Wrath of the Skies is Destroy, right? Yeah. So we play this Thespian stage out. We can turn this into a Forest and just play around there Back to Basics in a pretty neat fashion. But this is the turn they flip their Tamiyo, I think, and they just start going upstairs with it. Unless they just want to keep harvesting cards out of it, which is also fine. It's just their deck is pretty win condition light is the thing. So having the Tamiyo going up is a win condition. Why are they cracking this now instead of attacking? Like, you always want your clue first at this situation. Because unless they're planning on doing like a 4th Eolingus for 1. What are they bouncing here? No targets. Sure. So they're flipping their Tamiyo. So they've missed out on a clue here. Which seems a little odd to me. A Narset Parter of Veils. That's a pretty solid Magic the Gathering card right there. They get to look at the top 4. Try and find something to jam us right up. Another Narset. Okay, that's not so bad. Obviously, it finds more cards down the stretch. But like I said many times today, we care about specific problems. Not just the raw density of cards in our opponent's hand. Alright, let's go and get our Thespian stage with a different name. Forest, Swamp. Just some basics over here. A Sylvan Scrying. They have a Force of Negation. They will pitch this. This is worth them pitching 2 cards. If they don't, then we can kill them, potentially. The -1 from Tamiyo will not be enough to stop 20 being... Oh, wow, they're just letting us have it. Alright. So we get to see what our opponent rips with the Narset before we decide if we're going for it. We have this Elvish Spirit Guide in hand, which might take our opponent by surprise, but they can obviously cast sorceries at instant speed with Teferi, which might mean that they can cast a Prismatic Ending, which would be a problem. I don't know if we want to try and take out their white source. I suspect this Ghost Quarter will not stop them from having white mana. They'll just go and get another white source. So they probably have more than 1 Plains in their deck. They are returning a Swords to Plowshares. That's pretty good. And they're looking at top 4. There is a Ponder. They can cast that now if they want to make their land drop, which they do. If they already made their land drop, then they maybe just play that on their turn, unless they're trying to get a 4th Eolingus going right now. Right, there's their second white source. So our Ghost Quarter might be able to take them out of white mana. Right, here's another Narset. We already seen this one. Oh, this battle is very much an uphill one. Another Swords to Plowshares. So our opponent has 2 Swords to Plowshares in their hand. Alright. And 2 white mana up right now. Pithing Needle. What does that do for us? Stops our opponent digging with a Narset. Stops the Tamiyo going upstairs. We don't care about Tamiyo going upstairs just yet. Let's play this Needle and see if they want to counter this or not. I think we named Teferi so they can't instant speed Wrath of the Skies away our Pithing Needle. Time Raveler. So our opponent taps out one of their white sources. We might try and hit the other one and see if that gives us a window. Obviously, I mean in a turn cycle where we get to attack. Not right now. By stopping the Teferi, they're way more likely to tap things on their turn. Alright, another white source. This is a one-shot white source, though, because of their own back to basics. Alright, Narset, what are you going to find? A Ponder. We're going to see the Ponder cast. 2 white sources still up. It's tough. We need to draw a lot of hand disruption. Sylvan Scrying, what does that do for us? Not a lot. We could take this Fortheolingus out of their graveyard, in case that is a thing that we're worried about them getting back, which I think it probably is due to this Tamiyo, because I can just get that back next turn. They might only have this as their own win condition. It's unlikely. They probably have a second one and maybe one other card. So they might be trying to beat us down with Snapcasters at some point. Alright. Force of Negation pitching a Supreme Verdict that we didn't know about. So they probably get the Fortheolingus back this turn and they kill us over a couple of turns. And that's probably lights out for this one. And we have to go to the sideboard and consult the matrix. Blue-white stuff isn't generally super good in the meta right now. At least not in my opinion. However, it's very good against us. Opponent not doing anything. Showing some real cowardice. Love to see it. A Boseiju. Do I care about Boseiju? Not particularly. We can hit this. Alternatively, we could make a Spirit Guide right now. 1, 2, 3. I think we're better off just holding the Boseiju. We can use it to hit their Tundra. And that gives us 2 ways of removing their white sources. And maybe that becomes enough. But we know they've got 2 plows. So they need to have no white sources up. Okay, so getting the Fortheolingus back now. This is probably lights out. Unless they tap quite low for it. And then we can blow them out with our ways of disrupting their mana. That's what we're going for here. So they're holding up 2 Swords to Plowshares here. Our opponent's going to get the Monarch. Yeah, we just have to let this happen. And then with the Monarch trigger on the stack at end step. We see what we can do here. Actually, we should have done this in the main phase, right? Because they're just going to float mana off of this now. That was a mistake. I was supposed to do that in the main phase. Do you have more than 2 planes? Right, they're floating the white. Yes, this is the mistake we've made here. If they have another planes here, then sure. It didn't really matter. But we might have given up an opportunity. They did not have another planes. We gave up an opportunity there. That misplay might end up costing us the game. A Lotus Petal. Sure. Let's play this out. Have a little bit more manners. I think we have lost this one. So we did have an opportunity there. If we did that in the main phase. And then make our guy in the end step. That was just click through one too many phases back in there. I normally have an end of combat phase step. End of combat step. Stop for our opponents. And for ours. I didn't have that one, so I went straight through the main. So we take 6 here. Next time we take 6. We have one more turn here. We need our opponent to tap out of their planes. They're not going to here. We know they've got double plow. What do we need here? Cabal Therapy, which we don't play, would be handy. We just name both these plows. I think we're just done here, and we're going to have to go to the sideboard. We've got some nice tools for this. This is obviously a slower matchup, so having more lands in play for something like a Sylvan Safekeeper really works out for us. So we draw a Hexmage. Doesn't change much, does it? It's a first strike guy, though. Can block one of these human knight tokens. A Force of Will. Just a hard cast Force of Will. I don't think we can win this one now. Alright, let's go to the sideboard. Right, so Bojuka Bog, Ghost Quarter, and Pithing Needles are kind of the lesser exciting things here. And that gives us access to Sylvan Safekeepers and this Duress. And we probably need some amount of Abrupt Decay for our opponent's possible Harbinger of the Tides, and we've already seen the Back to Basics. Alright, turn 1, Inquisition, turn 2, Hexmage. Sign me right up, I guess. This is basically the hands you want is Urborg, discard spell, turn 2, go. Now our opponent can certainly get around this. We're getting a Force of Will. That means our opponent has an answer to what we're doing. So drawing an Elvish Spirit Guide would be the best draw for us, or a Lotus Petal here to give us access to this crop rotation. Actually, no, we can't even Sejiri Steppe because we have the Sejiri Steppe in hand. Interesting. So this is going to be a Tamiyo or a Ponder. The Grafdigger's Cage. That is not what my deck does. Interesting. They must think we're a lone... No, it doesn't even work with a lone deck, does it? Alright, let's send it here. We've got the Not of This World. A perfectly fine draw. Haven't really got any chance to leverage these today. Surely we're not getting stifled here. If they're trying to consign to memory this, it doesn't work. So our opponent might be about to learn something. Nope. Got Brazen Borrower. We got Not of This World. Alright, we just win. Okay, sure. Let's just jam in again, I suppose. Right, what have we got here? This hand is not as good. I don't really like these Abrupt Decays that much in the matchup. I think we're going to mulligan this one. Like, they're fine. They're better than things we're taking out. Yeah. I like this one. One of these cards has got to go. So this little combo here is what I'm all about. With some protection. If we want to Thoughtseize on the turn we're going, then we keep the Lotus Petal. But if we want to have green mana in case things don't work out, then we have that option too. I think we get rid of the Lotus Petal and we Thoughtseize on one before our opponent gets to... Well, we'll see what they do on turn one. We can Thoughtseize around potential shenanigans with a Brainstorm or whatever. Right, so they're pondering here. So we can Thoughtseize, although they do get to keep something on top. We don't get to see with our Thoughtseize, which is the smart thing to do here. But if they shuffle, then that's excellent for us. They did not use the ability, so now we have to make a call as to whether or not we're firing off this Thoughtseize or not. So they've obviously kept their hand for a reason. I think because we're not going next turn anyway, unless we draw a Hexmage, but then we're probably not we're just going to run into a counter spell anyway. We just Thoughtseize next turn and maybe have, so we get a look at whatever our opponent kept on top. I don't believe our opponent's running Daze effects in their deck. So let's just Thoughtseize them right now. Take a peek. What have you got? They have a Brainstorm to protect their hand. But that means they don't get to use this Prismatic Vista that effectively. 2 Swords to Plowshares, a Force of Negation, and a Narset Part of Veils. We'll take one of the plows, and then I'll play this Thespian stage, and we'll move on. Double plows, eh? So they can plow in our turn and protect it with the Force of Negation. So we're going to need to find another piece of this puzzle. Now we've got a lot of hand disruption spells. We've got 8 hand disruption spells left in our deck. We've got 2 Sylvan Safekeeper. We've got 3 more Not of This World. So we've got a decent selection of things. Alright, so they're only taking one of those cards that they brainstormed on top. So they probably put the best card on top to keep it safe. Or the most unique card. Give me the Narset. Harbinger of the Seas. Okay. We have Abrupt Decays in our deck precisely for this reason. A crop rotation. So if our opponent taps low enough on their turn for us to crop rotate, I will crop rotate this Urborg into a swamp. So we have access to Abrupt Decay if we draw it. I'm now feeling very annoyed about the clicking through our opponent's main phase in the first game. A Narset. Okay, so this is where we interact here. Goodbye Urborg. We've got another Urborg, so if this gets countered, it's not the worst thing in the world. They can't force negation because it's their turn. We'll go and get our swamp here. What are you looking for? They only have 1 white source as well. That might be something we get to tax a little bit. And comes a Harbinger. This damage is pretty minimal. Like, obviously, we could just not draw one of our Abrupt Decays. That is a possibility. So we put out this Dark Depths, and that gives us a 20/20 if this ever leaves play. Right, the Narset's going up. They're going down, sorry. Getting some more cards in their grip. Surgical Extraction. Okay. An interesting one to board in against me. But they just want to make it so that we don't get multiple attempts at comboing. We just have 1 Marit Lage to get there with. Alright, they're going up with the Teferi here. So this is genuinely an annoying card for us to deal with. Because it means if we blow this up, this comes down at sorcery speed and they bounce it. We don't get to protect it with Not of This World either. So our opponent has assembled a bit of a lock here. So what we need to draw is either running Abrupt Decay so we can take out the Teferi and the Harbinger of the Seas, or we need to find a Lotus Petal so that we can get rid of their Teferi using our Vampire Hexmage. Vampire Hexmage can also check the Harbinger of the Seas. Right, we're seeing that Brainstorm, shuffling things up a little bit. Just Boseiju isn't going to be able to hit anything useful here. Not yet, at least. Verdant Catacombs is not a part of the puzzle that we're looking for. I'll cast a Not of This World soon. That's not really a position we ever want to be in. So something like a Sylvan Safekeeper into Abrupt Decay would be a really nice set of draws as well. This is where it would shine, because we have so many lands right now. Because this particular matchup tends to go on a bit, because you need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you go off. unless you're just windmilling really early doors. That's the two types of games you have here. Go early, your opponent has one piece of interaction and you say no to it. Or you have this really long grindy game where you set up all your little pieces to stop your opponent's interaction. At least it's going to be difficult for them to cast a 4th Eolingus because they're not going to be able to find what they're looking for. I like this, but there's no point casting it now because we're a ways off of trying to win the game. So we're just going to keep playing lands. We've got loads of food for a Sylvan Safekeeper if we draw it. So we're looking for a Lotus Petal and an Abrupt Decay. So we need 2 draws to get us where we need to go. 2 Abrupt Decays also does it. It's very once again going upstairs. There's not many turns left of this game because the 2-2 is eventually going to get there. A Dress Down. That is an interesting choice here. Oh, it doesn't impact this because of the way layers work. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. I thought they were going to use this to then make this loose text so this comes in and they can get rid of it. But the way layers work is pretty messed up. Do I want this Boseiju? Or do I just want another land in play? I think it's probably better in hand for now. We don't need to duress our opponent here. Alright, this game is slowly reaching its conclusion. Our opponent's spending a lot of time thinking about turning their creature sideways. Sure, another Lorien revealed. Our opponent has drawn half of their deck. Yep, they have to discard some cards because they've got so many. They're just looking for that red source, I suspect. They did board in Consigned to Memory. Not convinced that's a great use of their time. Okay, not many turns of this left. So we can F6 our opponent's turns because we didn't get to do anything. We do have the Boseiju, but it's unlikely to be a thing we want to cast or activate. Right, we've got a Narset coming in. Force of Will. Makes things awkward. So we need to cast the Duress this turn. Not of this world. So cast the Duress this turn. They can hard cast the Force of Will if they really want. Leaves them slightly shields down, but I don't think they'll care given the state of the board. Sure, just hard cast Force of Negation is fine too. Yeah, so we need to do that turn so that we could Abrupt Decay the Harbinger and then unlock the black mana that way. I guess we didn't specifically have to cast it that turn, I suppose. But I would like to see how dead we are in our opponent's grip. Like, we're probably just dead to this Harbinger of the Seas anyway. The old 20 damage from a Magus of the Moon in blue. Magus of the Blue Moon. I'm not particularly a fan of this card existing, to be honest. I think it's given some decks an extra access to attack on, which is a bit much. I think we need some more printings for Dark Depths decks to help us out. We've got another Nasta in. Because the technology to fight us keeps getting better, and we haven't gained any tools for quite some time. Our deck's still fine though, but matchups like this are pretty miserable. Got a Brainstorm over there. Let's draw our final card of the game. It might not be our final card, but it's very likely to be. A Lotus Petal. I don't believe we're going to resolve our spell here. They should let this go. They've only got 3 minutes left on their clock. I'm just going for a Force of Negation. Sure, we are dead. We don't get to play the Hexmage here. Yeah, so we lost that one by misclicking in game 1, and that's unfortunate. The league should have been a 3-2, and we were pretty unfortunate against the Eldrazi, where they had just the right things off the top. We played around them drawing like a bunch of stuff, and then they drew the minor thing that they could draw to get through there. They had to draw one of their 4 Lotus Petals for us to lose that game, and that's what happened. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the deck. I love this deck. I play it in paper. I obviously have all the old boarded versions of cards where possible because they look sweet. But I think this deck is relatively well positioned. Like, if you look at the matchups it's good into, so it's good against the blue-black Reanimator deck. It's good against the Painter deck. It's good against the mono-red deck. So that's a bunch of the top decks there. We struggle against like the blue-white style decks. There's not very many of them in the top of the meta right now. Jeskai sort of floats around like a few tiers down, and occasionally you'll see it. And obviously we played against that new Stoneblade list. I'm not sure how good that deck is. We'll also have to wait and see if it keeps making waves. Obviously, when someone like Max Distortion plays it, there is a bit of player bias because it's a good player playing a brew, so they're going to have brew's advantage, and they're also, very good at what they're doing. I'm not sure if it's the way, but it might be, which gives us another bad matchup. The lands matchup is bad. The Green-White Depths matchup is bad. The Death and Taxes matchup is bad, but those decks are all sub 2% at the moment, I think. So they're not really the biggest thing for us to worry about. The Blue-Black Tempo matchup is pretty even. Back when it was Grixis Tempo, it was very favoured for us, but the addition of some of the cards they have in that particular list at the moment is a bit much for us because they get to run on basics, and because they're not 3 colours, so they get to run Harbinger of the Seas, and they just have one too many resources for us to deal with. It's a pretty even matchup, but I don't particularly like playing it because they get to sculpt their draws a lot better than we do. So yeah, we've got some good matchups at the top of the meta. We've got a couple of bad ones like Doomsday as well. I think our Eldrazi matchup is positive as well, and the Carnforge is pretty good as well. So, you know, we have a lot of good matchups, we have a lot of bad matchups, we have a few in the middle, and you're going to need to get your way through the matchup lottery. I can understand why some people don't like playing this at a big tournament, because if you're relying on the matchup lottery a little bit, then you could be out of luck sometimes. Whereas some decks that have more matchups around the middle, you have more ways of beating through some of your bad matchups. Obviously, you know, we still have ways of beating through our bad matchups. It's not the end of the world. But at the end of the day, if you're going to win any tournament of Magic the Gathering, you're going to need some fortune. Obviously, there's still a lot of play skill involved. You need to have your play skill and some luck going your way. You can certainly grind good results just by being a skilled player, but if you need to actually full-on win tournaments, you're playing against really good players as well when you get to the top of the tournaments, so you need to have a little bit of fortune as well. And that's not just like the things you draw. A lot of it is the matchup, especially when you're playing a deck like this with polarizing matchups. Anyway, I'm done with this one today. I hope you enjoyed playing a bit of the old classic here. Next week, like I said, we're going to be starting to play all the top tier decks in the format. Sort of playing them with a little bit of a guide handy so I can sideboard more appropriately and make sure that I'm giving you some useful insight for the Eternal weekends coming up. Alright, if you'd like to see more about this deck, check out my Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a YouTube member or support me on Patreon. And if you would like to like and subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything and it really does help me out. Alright, thank you so much for watching and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.